How is everybody doing? And welcome back for another Strength Chat episode. Today, I have got a very special guest for you all. Today, I am joined by the founder and CEO of ASENSEI, as well as being a black belt in Jiu-Jitsu and Karate. So, a double whammy there for you. Today, I am joined by the one and only Stephen Webster. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me. Excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, thanks a lot for taking the time to jump on. But I suppose the first question, how are you? What have you been up to recently? What's been happening in your world?
I'm the CEO of a venture-backed startup. It's just chaos. No, things are good. It's an interesting time right now. Just the whole. I mean, I live as we'll get into. Like, I live in the world of you know sport, fitness, and healthcare. I'm a technologist, as I'm sure we'll unpack. And health and fitness are just they're in a moment like many other industries where suddenly digital technology is changing the shape of the industry. Like, I always compare it to e-commerce. Think back 20 years, like, you can buy stuff online and nobody's going to want to buy clothes online because you can't try them on and you can't send them back. And sport, fitness, healthcare, we're kind of at that point where, or maybe a little bit past that point where it's just inevitable that technology is going to touch every single part of the industry. And that just creates a ton, either you can be dystopian about that or you can just be excited about it. And I'm someone that's generally optimistic about technology. So yeah, it's a crazy time to be in tech, and it's an exciting time to be in sport and health and fitness. So yeah, I look
Nice.
forward to getting it.
Yeah, and we'll dive into a little bit more of that. But I know I did quite a brief introduction there. But for everyone listening who might not know your background, in terms of, I mentioned there with jiu-jitsu and karate, obviously changing with technology and yeah, just your background and how you got to this point, if you like.
Yeah, there's kind of there's two threads that run here, right? It's like, why do I care about sport and fitness and why do I care about technology? So I'll do the technology side first and I'll keep that a little bit more brief. I mean, I've just always been, I was that guy, right? I was my dad was an electronics engineer. He was like working on fighter aircraft, tornado aircraft. So it was like the bulk of his career, back in the 80s and the 90s as I was growing up. So I was just surrounded by tech as a kid and probably first kid in the town. I grew up in Fife in Scotland, and first kid in the town to have a computer. I was the kid that the teachers would call when the BBC computer wasn't working, and you come press it, come fix it. So I've always been in tech, and that took me to University of Edinburgh, studied computer science and electronics. I was a hardware engineer when I graduated. I was a chip designer, and then when the internet really started to happen, and actually when e-commerce and stuff really started to happen, it was just cool. I want to be a part of that. So I kind of moved into software. And my career's largely been in software since then. I had a company in Edinburgh. We actually got acquired by Adobe, as in Adobe Photoshop. So that's how I found myself out in California, pretty much. Adobe, and then worked for Adobe, worked for Microsoft. So that's kind of my tech career. But listen, like many of us, and like probably most of your audience, yeah, I just grew up. Like, as soon as it was light, I was jumping over the fence at the back of the house and playing football. I get to say football and not soccer. I was just always playing sport as a kid, but the sports or activities I was kind of like um, obsessed by, I guess, was martial arts. First judo, actually, when I was like 7. I joined a judo club, and then jiu-jitsu. Yeah, I was a black belt by the time I went to university. But I wanted to compete in sport at university. I didn't want to just be stuck behind books, and
Yeah.
so I'd never done karate before. And so I kind of figured there was 2 karate clubs at Edinburgh Uni, and I was like, which one wins the most, matches? They're like that. I was like, I want to be in that one then. And so I competed, I captained, and I actually ended up coaching Edinburgh Uni Karate Club for over 10 years, 10 consecutive national championships,
Nice.
which was exciting. So that's where my passion for sport and fitness and coaching comes from. And essentially, this company really just brings the two worlds together. It's like, how do you use technology to elevate coaching and elevate the experience of being coached, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing I kind of like what you touched on there in terms of, technology and sport and kind of blending those together. Is that something that you'd always maybe thought about, or was that, because you said there about what club wins the most? And I know, for myself, sometimes competing and doing your own sport, sometimes you don't really think anything outside that apart from how can you develop and get better. Was it when you started coaching that you started thinking more about, combining technology and sport, or how did that kind of come about?
No, it's a great question, and it's a really nostalgic question because when I think back, and I'm sure a bunch of people will relate with this. When I was playing footy in the backfield, it's like let's play mini World Cup. I'll be Argentina, you be Brazil, I'm Maradona, you're Pele, and so you practice, but you practice with this like imagination of like maybe the local talent scout will kind of wander by the field and see me, and I'll get picked, and you had posters of your favorite players on the wall. As a martial artist. I always had a punch bag hanging in the freezing cold garage. And I was always trying to think about even as a kid, as a nerdy kid, I'm like, Dad, is there any way I could put something on the bag that would tell me how hard I hit it? I
Yeah.
want to, like, am I getting better? And then the other sport I played a lot of, I'm totally aging myself now, child of the 90s, was like street hockey became like crazy popular. My family's an ice hockey family, Fife Flyers. And
Yeah.
so we were always kind of like watching hockey, and like my uncles played for the Flyers. But I was always playing street hockey, and I'm out in the backyard, the back garden. I'm bilingual. I'm out in the back garden, and I'm shooting balls or shooting pucks into the net, and I want to know how many went in and how many missed. So I was always as a kid, like it would be, and I'm laboring the point a little here, but the point I'm really trying to make is lots of unsupervised practice. I was practicing by myself, and I was kind of in my head practicing with my heroes, with Maradona, with Pelé, with Kenny Dalglish. Bruce Lee's in the garage, and Wayne Gretzky's kind of like watching my hockey shots, right? That was my unsupervised practice inspired by my heroes. Fast forward now to coaching at university, and I got to experience a very real problem, and you'll know this as a coach as well, is I can only coach you when I'm there.
Yeah.
And so, but you're probably practicing without me, and there's just as much chance, if not more chance, that you're practicing incorrectly when I'm not there than correctly. But nobody's cueing you, nobody's correcting you. You're laying down muscle memory that I don't want you to have. And so, especially at a university club where my students might disappear for the summer and come back, like, where the hell were you training? Like, what what just happened? I need to unfix this before I can fix it. And I knew that as a athlete as well, right? I would invite instructors to come and teach at the club, and then I'd not see them for another 6 months. But I'm trying to recall and practice what I'd learned so that when they come the next time, I'm moving forward. And so this problem of unsupervised practice and how can you supervise unsupervised practice has been an itch I've tried to scratch many times. Like as a kid, Dad kind of put a pressure sensor on my punch bag, and we have a customer now out of Portugal called Bout. We're doing exactly that
Ah,
with, and then some, the boxing bag with a brain. But then I spent a lot of time in my career. I spent several years of my career at Microsoft.
yeah.
And I was working closely with teams like Xbox and Xbox Connect, and how does that camera on the Connect track your body? And we were doing some of the most popular non-games titles were like Nike Connect and workouts and boxing and yoga. So Microsoft definitely got my head back into this, like, you know what? AI and computer vision and wearables and like, assistants like Siri and Cortana in our ear. Like I could put the voice of Bruce Lee, or I could put the voice of Wayne Gretzky or Kenny Dalglish in somebody's ear and give them coaching in real time. And so I had this moment at Microsoft of like let's go tackle that problem. Let's go solve that problem.
Nice.
Long answer, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, no, that sounds cool, and I suppose just building on that, maybe a little bit of just going down that route a little bit more is sometimes you do need that spark again to think, oh well, how does this work? And I know with football, rugby, there's when you're watching or when people are watching sport on TV. They've got all these stats. They've got all this technology that they're using. Everyone's got some form of smartwatch or something that they can track. And I suppose um, when you said there about the people, the athletes that you would coach, you can only coach them whilst they're there. And that's the thing of, a lot of it is in person, relying on that coach and that in person, which as a coach myself, I think is really important. However, there's more tools available now to coaches to,
Right.
I think, is just to increase that standard of service. How much of an important role now do you think is technology playing in sport, in coaching, and trying to, I think is develop the right word, to try
Yeah.
and push it forward in terms of, the quality of coaching and feedback that people are getting, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, and I'll give you a very high level explanation of what we do so that I anchor it in some context because there's so many different technologies,
Yeah.
right? And in sport, I mean, we love our gadgets and golf and stuff. So very briefly, we've made human movement something a machine can understand. Just by standing in front of a camera, I'll just talk about computer vision today, although we can also work with smart connected clothing. Um, but basically, just being in the field of view of a camera, whether that's on a mirror, on a tablet, on a phone, on a whatever piece of fitness equipment, we motion capture the individual in real time. So we're getting your skeleton kind of 60 times a second. We're seeing your skeleton moving through space. And then we've built a movement recognition technology that says, oh, I can see that Steven's doing a front squat. But more than that, I can see he's doing a front squat. I can see his range of motion. I can see there's knee valgus, there's torso shift, there's asymmetry as he goes down into the squat. We're seeing all of this data, and we're spewing out this fire hose of like more than anyone could, manage. Because coaching, one thing at a time, right?
Yeah.
And then that's the last thing we develop is what we call Coach IQ, which is how do we take the know-how of a particular coach or a particular philosophy on coaching or a particular style of coaching and say, when the machine sees this or sees all of this, what would you do? Would you cue in the moment? Like, would you give a cue? Or would you do a regression and say, actually, let's not do this version of the exercise, let's do this, or let's deload, or let's do a drill. There might be a drill that you might teach. So we capture that knowledge of the coach so that when you're practicing without the coach, you can be still following the coaching and getting the cues and getting the correction and getting the drills of the coach. And then, of course, we can give that information to the coach. Like, what did Stephen do when you weren't with him? The last thing I'll just share about our technology is it's an ingredient in other people's products. So you're not going to go and buy an ASENSEI, coaching app. We're working with other customers to say, you put our technology in your products and in your apps, and you can add this kind of capability. So, in your world, like customers like if Vertimax, I mean, Vertimax are huge in the US, for vertical jumping and for explosiveness. So Vertimax now have a companion app called VertiCoach, and that's using ASENSEI. That's watching you on the platform do your jumps. But now we're like, did you do a basic countermeasure jump? Did you do it correctly? What height did you achieve in the jump? So all the stuff that you would have needed expensive force plates for, you can now do it with an iPhone. Maybe Power Block is another. I'll use one more example. If you know Power Block, this sort of
Yeah.
adjustable dumbbell. We've not only can we recognize what exercises you're doing with a Power Block, we've added technology that recognizes which unit of Power Block is that. What have you configured it to? And so as soon as you pick it up, ASENSEI is telling the app, Stephen's doing a bicep curl and he's doing it with 25 pounds.
Yeah.
So with all of those ingredient technologies in other people's products, we're basically able to digitize the gym floor. So now what does this mean to your question? And I just always think about this as these kind of technologies like motion capture, like Olympic athletes were using motion capture back in Sydney in 2000. You know, they would have all these expensive Vicon camera systems down the side of a track, trying to find that tenth of a second for a 100-meter hurdler, right? And, you know, fast forward 25 years, we're now putting that kind of technology in a smartphone, and it's not for the marginal gains that are required by an Olympic hurdler. It's so that you know your clients can be moving safely and non-injuriously, and you know being given progressions and regressions. So you know we think it's inevitable that this technology appears at home so customers can practice unsupervised at home. But we're really excited by what's happening on the gym floor, how coaches are starting to use our technology. And I'll tee up your next question by saying I don't believe that technology should replace coaches. I'm a coach. I celebrate coaching. But I think coaches that use the right technology will replace the coaches that don't.
Yeah, I think one thing, and that you read my mind there. As soon as you were saying that, I thought about my next question. And one thing you said there about actually, the coaches that use it, it's not going to replace coaching. And I suppose my two follow-up questions from there is, why do you think sometimes there's maybe a resistance against using technology, too much? Because you said there about the elite level of sport, they use technology. That's what it's there for. In powerlifting, there's velocity-based training now. How fast you're actually moving, how fast are you moving the bar? Whereas sometimes a lot of coaches can be reluctant to use that. Do you think that's because of not understanding the technology, not knowing how to use it, or just because there hasn't been the technology there that, like what you're saying, the information that it'll give you that feedback, it'll show you, like you said about, would you would you cue that exercise straight away? Would you do a regression? Do you think there just
Right.
hasn't been the technology there that coaches can use, if that makes sense?
Man, this is a huge question. Touch on so many different things. I'll try and be brief. I think the first, let's step out of the world of coaching for a moment and just let's talk about human behavior
Yeah.
and technology adoption in general. Technology adoption always goes through a curve. There's a classic curve that we talk about as the technology adoption life cycle. And we all know it. I like to use electric cars as the example here, because it's quite present, right? Our CTO at ASENSEI, he had a Tesla like 10 years ago, or
Right.
probably 8, 10 years ago. Super early adopter, understood the technology before everybody else. Understood that there's not charging stations all over the UK and it's going to suck, but that's not my problem because I only drive around Hemel Hempstead, and I care more about the benefits of the car than. So you get the early adopters, and they're the evangelists for the technology as well. And when you're in that mode, when you're in that moment, what you've also got is the right of the curve coming up with all the reasons why it's not going to work. Oh, electric cars will never work. They charge. They're too heavy. They catch fire all the time. All this stuff we hear today, right, about why we shouldn't have electric cars. And so then what happens is if a technology starts to sweep in adoption, now you're getting into the mass market. There's more people that are like, I should look at this and I shouldn't. So start thinking about some of the wearables. Like most coaches now are going to be okay. Like if you've got a hoop and it's giving you a readiness score and it's like, hey, what's your readiness score? Oh, you're tired today. Like they're no longer calling bullshit on that. They're like, that's kind of useful. Velocity-based training is probably also a good one. I know it's like a religious argument inside the coaching, but we see companies like Perch, who, I mean, especially in the US, there's a Perch on every rack, and they're doing a great job educating coaches and making it easier for coaches to understand how to use velocity-based training and make the technology as simple as possible. And so I think that's generally the case. Like you've just got to, where are you on the curve with any one particular technology? The second thing I would add though is us coaches are interesting beasts, right? So I've always coached like this. I didn't need that, or so-and-so didn't need that, and they became, fantastic. And so there's definitely a lot more Luddites around technology, and I don't mean that as an insult. It's just
Yeah.
a general statement. There's a lot of general reluctance to bringing technology to market. So how do you solve that? It has to provide benefit. Like it has to make somebody feel like, you know what, this helps me do my job better. So I'll give you one example for folks that run a gym or run a studio. One of the ways we use our technology is what we call a smart warm up. So as you're warming up, as you're doing your movement prep for your workout, what do we do as coaches without technology? Like, I'm warming up, you're looking at me and you're like, his hip seems a little sticky today. Like, what's going on there? Have you, I did a red eye flight from, New York to San Francisco. It's like, okay, your hip's a bit sticky. Your shoulders, your range of motion's not looking very good. I was going to stick a loaded barbell on you today, but like maybe we won't do that. Maybe we'll do some other exercises. Excuse me. And even in the warm up, you might be like, oh, let's add in this. Let's just do this exercise and just by the fact that there's a coach watching you warm up, you're adjusting the warm up and you're starting to like adjust the programming for what's about to happen in the next
Yeah.
45 minutes. So with a smart warm up, you're still warming up with a coach, but there's now a tablet watching the athlete as well. And what ASENSEI is doing is recognizing the exercise that you're doing. Okay, so Stephen's doing a mountain climber. Or actually, I know everybody uses overhead squats, but it's an easy example. So Stephen's doing an overhead squat. Oh, interesting. Look at his ankle mobility. Look at his hip mobility. Look at that asymmetry into the squat. Look at the shoulder range of motion. So there's all these things that the AI is noticing about that overhead squat. But what we do is we give that information to the coach on the floor. We don't give it directly to the athlete.
Yeah.
And so now, as soon as you've warmed up that athlete, it's like, here's what they're doing well. Here's what we noticed. But instead of, you've probably seen Tendo machines and whatever, instead of all these like graphs and charts and like, what do I do with all this information? What you're getting from ASENSEI is based on the coaching philosophy of the gym that you're working at or the performance center that you're working at. We saw this. You probably want to add these exercises into the warm up. You probably want to work this into the cool down. Recommend you don't do this or you do the next thing. But we give that information to the coach. We turn the coach into a super coach. And we've got one customer. I won't talk about them who they are just now because I think they're going to do some case studies with us, and you'll see them soon. But they're using that smart warm up as a new member onboarding experience, and they're seeing a massive lift in signups for packages because immediately you've warmed up, suddenly you're able to say like, oh wow, like this is all really good, but here's what we're going to work on over the next 8 weeks. And then you use that smart warm up as a benchmark 4 weeks later and 4 weeks later again. So for any gym owner or anybody who's trying to solve that kind of customer acquisition and customer churn problem on the gym floor, a smart warm up on a tablet is just a really great way of bringing some technology in that allows the coach to be a super coach.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I do like you mentioned that a couple of times of, a coach to a super coach, and really interesting about there in terms of, gaining clients because, it's that thing of, or what we try and do at the gym that I'm at is, that member journey. So beyond that consultation, okay, what does the next month look like? What does the next 8 weeks look like? Because,
Right.
from again, maybe a little bit of a tangent, but, the biggest thing, and you touched on it there, is that member churn. It's kind
Right.
of how it's maybe, get people can get clients, but then how do you keep them? And you want to keep them for a longer time and see how they progress, because that's how they get better. That's how they get, bought in as a, from a business point of view. And one
Yeah,
thing,
if you
sorry,
sat
go on.
on our sales meetings. I'm sorry, I'll pass back to you a second. You sat in our sales meetings. We use this line all the time: progression's retention. If you can show someone progression, you're much more likely to keep them. But sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah, no, no, absolutely. Because any time that we're, it's on the gym floor, there's a reason why there's a progression of exercises. There's a reason why you would do a warm up to see how they move, start at that point, and then they can progress from there. Whether it be starting with a goblet squat and progressing up to a barbell squat or whatever it may be, or progressing from one certain movement and then adding complexity, into that movement. Well, one thing that you said there about using technology and an influx of so much information. Do you think that because in the past, or even currently now, a lot of apps is using information, and it's kind of like information overload. And then
Yeah.
that's why coaches will be like, well, I've got all these numbers, but I've got no idea how to add it. Do you think actually having something that, using that mentality of, coach to super coach, actually, filtering it out so that it's case of this is what you need now, and speeding up that result? Because sometimes, the amount of assessments or things that it's looking at, there's all that information, but then it's the time to actually filter through that. And then it's a case of, right, actually it slows down that process, and slows down that momentum of, working with athletes and clients.
No, I mean, I'm a big believer in like so what, now what, like just giving people charts and data and Excel spreadsheets, um, especially in my world, which is essentially biomechanics, right? People love to look at charts and graphs and 3D avatars of somebody moving through space. And wow, this technology is amazing, but what do you do with all that data? And
Mm,
even coaches have not necessarily been trained to, you see this in golf a lot, right? There's all these, you pay thousands of dollars and you get your golf swing analyzed, and you get to see all these like graphs and charts of your hip speed, your wrist speed, your rotational speed. And like you have to train coaches to interpret that data. Whereas they could have just looked at your golf swing and be like, oh yeah, I can see what you're doing wrong. You're
mm.
turning your hips before you're, whatever. I'm no golfer. So no, I think as a philosophy, as a company, like it's our responsibility to make sense of the information we're capturing and turn it into coaching.
Yeah.
So for the coaches, again, we're not replacing them, but we're telling a coach is like, hey, to your point, it's like, hey, I just watched Stephen do a goblet squat, really good. He's getting good depth now. He's not, he's fixed that dorsal lean that was happening 2 or 3 weeks ago. I think you could move on to a barbell squat with no plates on the barbell. It's like, great, that's really helpful information, especially if that goblet squat is something that I was practicing at home. So, since you saw me last, I've reached the standard
Hmm.
in my at home practice. So that's great. Now I'm walking onto the floor with you, and you're like, hey, I can see from your, what you were, your workouts on Tuesday and Wednesday at home, like you've really fixed that dorsal lean that we were talking about. So let's put the kettlebell down and let's pick up a barbell and let's kind of focus on that. So progression is retention. I'll share one more use case with you so people have got an understanding. It's what we call guided learning. Because of the way we recognize exercises, we can break them down into parts. So again, I'll use a squat to press as a super simple example, right? If you've never done a squat to press before, I mean, we know this. Yeah, in my head, it's like this really simple movement, a
Yeah.
thruster, a squat to press. But if you've never done it before, and if you're not particularly gym savvy, you're not using your legs to drive your arms, and the coordination's a little off and whatever, and you're forgetting it. So with ASENSEI, and we call that gym intimidation. People don't like to be on the floor looking stupid, even with their trainer, right? So guided learning is an opportunity for us to move that initial instructional moment to a self-guided experience.
Yeah.
So at home, so you can say something like, "Great job today. Next time you're here, we're going to do some thrusters, some squat to presses." And if you want to, they're in the app. You can kind of learn the basics in the app, and then we'll start from there. So a little bit, and to me, that's like an assistant coach. That's
Yeah.
like when I coach karate, I'd be like, "Hey, Paul, could you go and take the beginners and could you teach them like a roundhouse kick to the waist?" And then once you've done that, I'll come over and I'll pick up some of the finesse, but you give them the fundamentals. And so we love guided learning as you talked about member journey. So I have my journey that's like in the facility, I'm being coached. I'm getting that recognition moment of like, hey, you're doing really well. It's time to move on to something new. Now you send me home with a digital experience that is go and learn something. And that gets me excited because now I'm going to go back to the facility. So for that engagement of like, how do you use digital as an on-ramp to brick and mortar? Now I'm coming back to the gym. I'm like, hey, coach, I did that squat to press. I'm getting a little bit confused. Could you help me with that? And now it's a much more, we've deepened the relationship between athlete and coach. With technology, we've not replaced the relationship. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And a lot what you've said there is, using examples from, your own experience of, of coaching. And do you think that's kind of what makes it maybe not user friendly, but actually like addressing what coaches actually need by blending, technology and coaching, because sometimes some of the for example, Leeds, well, it's Leeds Beckett now, but Leeds Met, really good, sports facility, but it needs to be in a lab, and like what you mentioned about at the Olympics, loads of cameras, and it's
Right.
it's almost clinical
Yes.
in a sense of that, whereas actually, people get involved in sport, in training, because they enjoy it. They have a passion for it. Do you kind of think that, by the two worlds combined, if you like, from your experience, has made it a little bit more not as scary to coaches, or a little bit as like, oh, I don't maybe trust
A
that?
million percent. A million percent. And listen, that's not just all on me. I mean, there's a team behind me.
Yeah.
There's a team in front of me. My CTO, who's in Hertfordshire, I know Bill through karate coaching. Like we met through karate coaching. We were both on the coaching circuit. We travel around various clubs around the UK. I've slept on more floors in Leeds than you would imagine, in sports centers. Um, and so like we met through coaching, and it was a shared passion for coaching and technology. My other co-founder, Ross, he's a runner, he's a tennis player, he coaches tennis, he coaches his kids' football team. So we all have this kind of DNA of coaching. And then as we've hired my VP of sales and partnerships in Denver, Colorado, Blake's got a master's in kinesiology. He was a strength coach and a lacrosse coach for over a decade, and then worked for Vicon actually out of Oxford in motion capture. So we have this deep DNA running through the team of like we're coach first, technology second. And I can't tell you how many times a week, if not daily, I kind of my eyes go to the top left, when you're kind of visualizing and recalling. And I'm in the Trust Upper Hall in Edinburgh University, this like smelly kind of basketball wooden floor court that was my dojo for, 15, 20 years. And I'm thinking about how did a coach, I would let people go away and practice, and then I would be like watching the floor and like, oh, a whole bunch of people are making this mistake. Clap my hands, everybody come round, let me show you something. Okay, now go and practice it. The way I would coach, right? Like I would use lots of visual language, but I would also turn, I'd demo this way, I would demo this way. So just innately, like I know what it is to I love the phrase that coaches should take a technique from their body and attach it to the other person. It's like, how do I give that to you,
Yeah.
right? Um, and so yeah, we are constantly thinking about what's the digital equivalent of these very human coaching best practices, and how do we deliver them? And I called it a smart warm up earlier. You didn't pick me up on it. You mean like a functional movement screen? No, no. And you said exactly what my answer would have been.
Yeah.
No, no. FMS is clinical. It's like really clinical, and
Yeah.
you don't need to call it that. It's just a smart warm up. Well, let's be smart about how you're warming up. And so we really. And the last thing I'll share is, I mentioned that I was at Adobe. I mean, Adobe is like the best company in the world for thinking about design and design thinking. And design thinking is all about really understanding who the user is and what their needs are and how to meet their needs. So like human-centered design. And so we take a very human-centered, athlete-centered, coach-centered approach, so that our technology is being used tastefully, and it's I hate the word accretive, but it's accretive to the coaching experience. It's adding value. We're not just trying to spew graphs and charts and Excel spreadsheets.
Yeah, definitely. And with that as well, because we've spoken a lot about the benefits of it, how coaches can use it. But in terms of you developing the technology, growing as a company, if you like, and you've touched on other partners that you've been working with. Was there any kind of challenges or obstacles in terms of creating this and trying to figure out what actually works best? Because if anything, sometimes same as coaching, sometimes it's a trial and error. What's going to work best, is something that you thought in the past actually the same thing now, or have you tried a couple of different things to get to this point, or is it just a continued development of it's organic, it's going to evolve and change over time anyway?
No, I mean, it's been very methodical. We took a very methodical approach that I'd learned at Adobe and then practiced again at Microsoft of like, how do you bring new technology to market? Listen, the first 4 or 5 years of the company was just like, is this even possible? Like technically, technologically, can we invent, something that will allow us to capture motion? And we spent a year or so figuring out good quality motion capture. Then it's like, how do we teach the machine to understand what it's seeing? And so there was a lot of just like R&D before we were even getting close to a customer and a coach and an athlete. But once we got the technology to the basics of, right, okay, we can do this, we can motion capture, we can recognize what you're doing and how well you're doing it, and then use that to deliver a coaching experience, you hit the nail on the head. It's like, what are the right experiences to deliver? What are the gaps we can fill and what are not really problems? And so we felt that before we could be an ingredient in other people's products, we had to show the world what the future could look like if our technology was in a product. And so we had to pick a sport or we had to pick a market. And we did this like, management consultant style, like, let's look at all the, everybody's like, oh, you should do golf. It's like, that's a stupid idea. It's such a hard market to enter as an early stage company. There's a million bigger companies in there. You should do physical therapy. This would be awesome. And we work with physical therapy now, but especially in America, oh, we don't want to go near healthcare. Like it's a super complicated, it's not a straightforward sales process. So long story short, we decided that indoor rowing, right, on a concept two would be a really good place to start. We knew nothing about rowing. None of us were rowers, and that's kind of a good thing because we got to go in with kind of fresh perspective. Um, but we built an app to teach people to row and allow them to work out with Olympic athletes. And the questions we were asking ourselves is, can we keep people engaged? Just sitting, I mean, you've probably told people to get on a concept two and warm up, and you can see their eyes like, oh my God, this is hard and it sucks. And am I doing it properly? So that was a really big challenge that we gave ourselves is like, can we get people excited and engaged in rowing? And so we have an app in the App Store. We still have it. Called ASENSEI Rowing. It was only for iOS because it was only really meant to be an experiment. Allows you to sit on a concept two. It connects to the performance monitor on a concept two. And it dynamically adjusts your program every time you sit on for your neck. And you don't go and choose a workout like, Peloton or whatever. It's like you're going through a program, and the next time you get on the machine, this is today's workout. And your split times are calculated for you based on your improvement. And we've done stuff around form coaching and technique coaching. And it's nuts. Like we've got like, hundreds of thousands of downloads and tens of thousands of people who are just like mad for indoor rowing through this app. So that was our consumer insight phase, right? That was like, people are intimidated by not knowing how to do the thing correctly. They like to be given drills. They like to be given technique pointers and feedback. They really like their programming to be adjusted. So, progressive overload, right? Should I be doing more reps or should I be using more load or like a faster split time? And a big thing that we learned is like, just don't make me think. Tell me what to do. Like, and that's why people love to work with a coach. It's like, I'm not walking around the gym for myself like, oh, the TRX looks like it's free right now. Maybe I'll go over and what exercise will I do on the TRX? What ones can I remember? It's like, just tell me what to do. So it's only been in the last 2 or 3 years where we shifted our focus to like, okay, now we can actually just make this technology be an ingredient in other people's products. And what's exciting about that is our different customers have different users with different needs. Like a power block customer is very different to say one of our customers who have a fitness mirror for people who have never really trained before. It's exciting because our technology gets used in different ways for different constituencies or populations.
Yeah. And as well, I think the exciting thing of that is, it encompasses a lot more about fitness because, fitness, health and fitness training is different for a lot of people, and we've touched on it before, how you're, coaching things. Is this going to be the right way? Is that going to be the best way to help that athlete, to help that client? And, by having things that's going to be able to match those different populations is going to be helpful. Interestingly, when you said about rowing, I've actually got a client who rowed at university. He also
Yeah.
rowed for clubs afterwards, and I was literally in the gym this morning. And sometimes he will give tips to other people on rowing. I've
Yeah.
learned a lot from him from rowing. Yes, I can teach somebody how to row, but it's very different when you've got somebody who has competed at a very good level of rowing. And sometimes you look at it and it's like, how do you keep correcting that? Is that repetition, and that feedback, which is important. Um, you've kind of touched on there, where you're at now in terms of being with, other populations and being in other technologies. What does the future hold then? Where kind of can you see this technology going? What's kind of your vision, if you like, going forward?
Yeah, so we, as I alluded to, probably just a couple of years ago is when we really started allowing third parties to take our technology and give them what we call a software development kit and take our software and put it in our products, right? And so we've been in a really interesting period where like lots of customers are developing things with our technology, but they've not brought them into market yet. But in the next kind of 6 to 12 months, you're going to see our first 20 customers in market with products. And I'll tell you who some of them are. Our website is ASENSEI, ASENSEI .com or .ai. And you can see some case studies in there if people want to dig in. But we've got at-home connected fitness products. One of our customers, Alter, they have this beautiful mirror that is also like a reflective TV display, right? And and it's all a bunch of people that used to work for Nike. So the performance coaches that have designed the programming, etc. They're kind of Nike, Under Armour, Newcastle United, Paul Winsper. So we've been working with Paul and his team on like, how do you take someone that's never really done strength training and mobility training before and teach them at home? So that's a super exciting product. I mentioned we're working with what we call legacy brands, the Vertimaxes and the Power Blocks, where how do you take a piece of equipment that doesn't need batteries and Bluetooth and whatnot, but suddenly just with your smartphone, we can elevate the experience of kind of working out with those products. We're doing stuff in sprinting, we're doing stuff in, I mentioned the boxing bag. So now, super cool company, Bout, BHOUT, bout.com. They've got this bag that can tell you how hard you're hitting it, but then they've got a camera mounted above the bag that uses a sensor to say, was that a hook or a jab or a knee or whatever? And so now they can gamify and really motivate that kind of boxing experience. And they're opening beautiful clubs all over Europe right now and expanding internationally. And so that's a great example of how the technology is in a club, but then you can buy the bag for at home.
Yeah.
So that's today. And so, what's coming next? We are just increasingly becoming the ingredient technology that's powering all these different kinds of experiences. And you'll see a lot of that in digital fitness. Chris Hemsworth's company Center, they're another customer. We can't talk at all about what we're doing with them, but it's public knowledge that they're looking at our technology. So you can expect to be excited about that in the fitness realm. But what's coming next is we're starting to work a lot more, and this is why this is a great conversation today for me, a lot more with brick and mortar, because when you've got like a boxing bag at home that's got cameras and knows if you're hitting it correctly and how hard you hit it, you don't want to go into the gym and there's some like tattered Everlast bag kind of chain in the corner. So consumer expectations of the equipment and the experience they should have in facility are being elevated by the experience that they have at home. And so a lot of big box and also just boutique, gyms and studios are now coming to us and like, how do we introduce technology into our facility that's going to improve member acquisition and member engagement and member retention? And also, how do we start to participate in that at-home moment as well? Like, I don't want my customer coming to my David Lloyd gym, but then when they go home, they're working out with Peloton or they're working out with, whomever else. So futures, but very present future is like we're now doing a lot in like omni-channel fitness and like how do we bring the technology in? And then the last thing that's a focus for us is healthcare. And we've done a decent amount of work with Queen Margaret University in Edinburgh and NHS Scotland around prehabilitation. So before people go in for major surgeries, How can we use digital technology to scale access to prehabilitation that improves the success and the outcome of the surgery that person's going to have? And then in the US, we're starting to work with a number of clients now all around physical therapy. So that's movement assessments, for like, let's take a look, like, let's see what's going on. But a real problem with physical therapy in general, and especially when it becomes digital or at home, is adherence. Are people going home and doing it, or are they doing it correctly? And now with ASENSEI, we can drive engagement and fun. We can remove the barriers and the frictions. Like, I don't remember how to do this, or am I doing this correctly, or how many should I be doing again? Technologies like ASENSEI are really helping in with the delivery and the adherence of physical therapy. So just to summarize, you're going to see a lot more connected fitness products and digital apps and legacy products powered by ASENSEI. You'll start to see us show up in brick and mortar in gyms and facilities and boutiques. And you'll start to see us. I mean, this is a general trend anyway.
Yeah.
The worlds of healthcare and fitness are starting to blend in both directions. And the best of in each is making the other better. And we're participating in that as well.
Nice, cool. And will you be trying to get one of the punch bags? Finally, get one of the punch bags to see at home if you.
I'll get that punch bag I always wanted as a kid. I mean, it's fun. I go into my garage and I get to say garage and not garage. I go into my garage and it's like a showroom for our customers' products, and it's really fulfilling to, I have a nice gym, in my garage that, I always wanted judo mat, judo mat, you get your own house. It's like, finally, I can have a dojo at home. And it's full of our customers' products, and ones that are launched and ones that aren't launched yet. And there's a lot of pride in that to be like, oh my goodness, our technology's in those products. So yes, Mauro at Bout knows I want one of the first bags off the line.
Nice. And quite a lot of, topics covered there, coaching, combining technology, what the future holds, which, sounds, very exciting. The last question that I like to ask though, as a kind of wrap up, if you like, from everything that we've chatted about there, and for everyone listening, what would be your take home points or words of wisdom from what we've chatted about today when it comes to combining coaching and technology?
I would flip the script. I'm much more curious. I want to hear from your audience, and I want to hear about, like, what are the problems that we have acquiring members? What are the problems that we have keeping members? What are some of the challenges I have on the floor that I could be helped with? And I'd love to be part of the conversation, because that curiosity is the cauldron for innovation, right? But that would be my tip, is like, engage in this. And some of the best products that are coming to market, I mentioned Paul Winsper, Alter, and those deep engagements between the coach side of our brains at ASENSEI and the coaches and the practitioners. That's what's driving the state of the technology art forward. And listen, I've got a bunch of really smart people working for us on the cutting edge of computer vision and AI and whatnot. But we're in service of solving the problems that coaches are telling us they have, right? And so I would say I would offer. I'm trying to not say be a part of the solution. It's such a cliche. But there's a real opportunity for coaches here to engage with the technology community and engage with companies like ASENSEI, and start to drive the state of the art, because we don't need more tech and more AI and more smartphones. We need more coaching insight and more coaching knowledge so that we can build products that meet your needs and meet your clients' needs. So there's a huge opportunity here. The world is changing like crazy right now with AI.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really a good thought to finish on. Being curious, thinking about, what can you add to there, because like what you mentioned, sometimes it can be a standoff between technology and coaches, whereas actually, you mentioned quite a lot of gadgets, apps, things that you can use there, whereas actually, there's input from coaches, trainers who have got that experience, and trying to blend them together, like what you mentioned about with the health and the fitness side of things. Well, thanks a lot, Stephen, for taking the time to jump on. Really, really enjoyed chatting with you today. If anyone's got any questions about what we spoke about today, want to see, or read about, the technology, where could people find that and reach out to you?
Yeah, I mean, not everyone in the coaching community uses LinkedIn as much as us technologists do, but LinkedIn is a great place to just be part of this like emerging kind of fitness tech, sport tech community. So I'm very active on LinkedIn. So if you find me and follow me or connect with me, excuse me, my VP of partnerships as well, Blake Whitcomb, he's very active, and so that's if you follow us there, we just love to share what we're up to and kind of give early glimpses and whatnot. So I would recommend there. Our website is ASENSEI.com, and through that website you'll be able to find us and contact us. But yeah, for gym owners, for coaches, for studio owners, whether it's big box or boutique, we'd love to help you get started. Love to help you put a mark on the page and just bring one piece of technology like a smart warm up into your facility, and start moving the needle on conversion and churn.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thanks a lot for taking the time to jump on, Stephen. Really, really enjoyed chatting with you today. Thanks a lot
Likewise.
to everyone listening, and I will see you all next week.